Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption. Hey, good evening everybody. It's Sunday, and I wanted to say hello, and I also want to give a shout out to those folks up in Canada, because if you guys can see this saw-whet owl, I thought it was really interesting because I had some birds of prey fly over it, and one of the guys that got me into the Iraqi dinar many years ago. We traded gold stocks and did all this kind of stuff, but the funny thing was he said, hey, I told him, because where I lived in very rural Northwest, a lot of birds of prey, and anyway, I had one fly over me while we were on the phone when we had cell service, for instance, right? And I told him about it, and he goes, oh, that's good luck. You should keep that in mind. It's always good luck. It's kind of a good thing. And I go, okay. So I've always remembered that. So that's why today I had two of them fly over, right? You know, in a very short period of time. And I thought about him. It was nice. So anyway, the saw-whet owl. So enjoy. Hey, Prime Minister Mohammed Saleh. We all know that he's a financial advisor to the Prime Minister. Yesterday, he had an article that caught my eye, and it says Iraq is no longer in the terms of a balance of external debt. One of the country's high debts in the past, right? External debts due to their current decade do not exceed, in all cases, $9 billion, and the general budget provides sufficient annual allocations to service debts, which means paying installments and interest according to the nature of the debt, which is called debt amortization. I'm not going to go into that, but anyway, he goes on and says, accordingly, Iraq has not recorded any default in their payments. So in other words, these guys have been on track for quite a few years. And effectively, I think that they're going to be talking about it's at least 10 years that they've been hammering it out. So what have they done? The Ministry of Finance, the central bank, shows that sustainable development and sustainable creditworthiness indicates international rating agencies, and it's going to promote their or get them better credit rating in your system. So keep in mind that's pretty positive, because hey, they've been doing the things that they said they were going to do, and they've stayed focused on it. And one of the things you got to give credit to is the country themselves, having the money, having the stability, having the sustainability to be able to pay down that debt. And then also you have a central bank that has been able to keep inflation low to allow a lot of these things to happen. And we know that Al-Allaq has been in the news, and we're going to get into some of that after a bit. But he says that points out that mechanisms were adopted to pay interest or repay debt installments from the annual allocations that were allocated in the federal budget. It's noteworthy that the monetary authority, by deducting those internal government debts specifically, was able to liquidate them or convert them into cash by discounting them at the Central Bank of Iraq through the secondary market operations and within the scope of monetary policy activities that target growth in the money supply, regulate economic liquidity, and address the manifestations of economic recession during the past 10 years. So Saleh, when he speaks, basically he talks serious, and it's usually telling you the truth. We might not always agree, but in his opinion, this is what he's talking about. And despite some of the things that they've gone through, and they're basically stating that there's no debt to speak of. This explanation from the Prime Minister advisor telling the world that Iraq is stable, capable of managing it herself, her debt, based off excellent reasoning. Iraq is showcasing herself. So here he's a mouthpiece for Iraq, and the article is called Iraq's External and Internal Debts, the details and figures from the Prime Minister's financial advisor. You can find that in patreon.com/MM and crew. Obviously, we look forward to having you, and be sure that you can find this article in Discord, and that was yesterday. So enjoy. Oh, Discord is Militiaman's chat room, by the way. A lot of people don't connect that yet, but once you do it. And by the way, if you're going to try to get into Patreon, please access it with not using an app. Use a web browser first time so that you can go through the membership and get to Discord so much easier, okay? But I know there's a few ever so often that don't quite have, don't get there, and one of the most often reason is because of the app, okay? So don't use that to get in. You might be able to use it later, but of course just initiate with not using it, okay? Referring Al-Allaq to retirement, legal step of settling political scores. Okay, this article is basically, it's been ongoing for the last few days. There's been a suggestion that he was going to resign. There wasn't any meat and potatoes to that. And then it was that his age, they went after his age, they said he's too old. Then obviously now they're suggesting that there's political scores that are doing this battle and giving bad publicity. Okay, so look, reputational risk for a central bank is not a good thing. They want to have a positive tone throughout the world. And then even in local markets in your own cities, you know, you don't want to have a bad flavor for your branch at your bank because it won't be successful. If it gets a bad tarnished name, they just don't make any money. It's not good. And then, you know, banks get, you know, public distrust. So anyway, this is part of that. And so there's some people out there that just don't want this to happen, because what are they doing? They're losing that dollar auction. They make a lot of money, specifically they did, but they're not going to anymore, off those dollar auctions, and they did it for a long time. So anyway, we'll leave that alone, but the Supreme Judicial Council has endorsed the State Council's findings regarding the referral of the governor of the Central Bank of Al-Allaq to retirement after reaching a legal age, and the decision came after an extensive study of the subject by the Studies Committee of the Presidency of the Judicial Oversight Authority. Hold on though, we're going to see if that holds true. Because of the circumstances, they do give a caveat that if there is something that's out there that they missed or something to that effect, that could be reversed. But they don't especially suggest that in this particular article, because it says the House of Representatives has inquired about the Supreme Judicial Council about the possibility of the governor's central bank continuing his position after reaching the legal retirement age. The Judicial Council responded that retirement is inevitable by law unless there is a special legal text exempting the governor of the central bank from these provisions, which does not exist in the current Iraqi law. Well, you're going to find that there's going to be something out about that again. So today, so that was yesterday, and this is today, so we're going to get into it. I'm not sure what order that's going to be in, but we're going to get to it. Central bank says we have a broad transformation program towards digitization. So they suggest he's going to go into retirement, he's going to be forced into retirement, and then here we are immediately thereafter of that article, we have central bank, we have a broad transformation program towards digitization. So effectively, he's still at work and he's still moving forward. He says the governor of the central bank confirmed that there is a wide transformational program towards digitization and the use of electronic payment tools. He goes on to say that there's a large program, they're trying to enhance it. They have electronic payment tools to enhance the program, which are witnessing today developments reflected in the real figures for the use of electronic payment tools, whether in the public sector or the private sector. So you're going to notice that we've all been talking about they're going to be merging in from the private to the from the public sector to the private sector. Sorry about that. And that's going to be a big deal. So back to the public and then into the private sector. He says, we now provide the extensive infrastructure to enable all the tools and products of financial services. This is Al-Allaq talking, you guys, to take their part. Usually it plays a very important role in our national economy and also in investing in the existing energies, whether they're material or human. I find that interesting because we talked about this in one of my or two of my videos in the past, and to you guys in Patreon as well, of course, but also, you know, to the public in general, is that, you know, we believe that there was artificial intelligence mixed with media to be able to create a model to be able to give valuation to Iraq, because it hasn't been traded for a long time on the Forex, and it still hasn't yet, right? So they have to figure out something, a way of doing it. And if you go back, remember we talked about the USD/IQD on the Forex Live. Yeah, the semiconductor sector. Now you guys ring a bell? Okay. So I think that in a sense, this is giving some credibility to what I had to say, because they're talking about this digital move that they're going to make and they're underway with. And it says that whether it was material or physical or human, human meaning has emotion. Humans have emotion. Physical materials don't have emotion. But okay. We will reflect, that's my view though, okay. We will reflect the scale of evolution in numbers in the past period, and has growth that has become significant with these tools. So growth has become significant because they've done something. They've done it. They're already talking about it. It's already started. Here they reflect on a time frame when it got started. It says in June of 2023, the Central Bank of Iraq announced the entry into force of the Iraqi Council of Ministers Resolution 23044 for the year 2023, which is to increase the number of electronic payment devices, etc. So they were gonna start doing the electronic digitization, at least with that law, in 2023, and to reduce use of paper money in collection and commercial transactions. So they're going cash less. Not saying no cash, cash less. That's what they say. And to reduce the use of paper money, so they're reducing it. They didn't say they were going to quit using it. The use of paper money in collection and commercial transactions. So think about it though. What is the largest component of most countries is the small and medium enterprises. And usually that's in the commercial sense. So they're going to be using less cash for all commercial and paper money collections. It's amazing, you guys, so think about that. So it sounds like Iraq is going digital, and we all know that, but look, all the infrastructure is in place for them to go electronic, to use less cash. So in my view, it's a very good sign, and there's more support for those dollar auctions to slow down. They have slowed down of late, and then you've seen a lot of barking from a lot of people against Al-Allaq, needs to resign, needs to be fired, needs to be doing all these things, right? But just because the MPs say that doesn't mean that it's accurate information. So remember who you listen to, who you read, and where that data comes from, because there's a lot of people that have backgrounds from different factions, different tribes, different everything over there. So, but the focus is the Central Bank of Iraq has been on top of it. They've been working in conjunction, whether we like it or they like it or not, with the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. Federal Reserve, to get Iraq to be in compliance with international standards so that they can know their customer. And so if you're doing nefarious deals, you're going to have a problem. And some of these banks, for instance, like Zain Cash, for instance, they had a problem. Remember Zain Bank? Right? They shut them down and they halted their stock trading. Why did they do that? Well, they are in receivership because they've got problems. And maybe there'll be more banks that have that problem. And it's not going to look good for shareholders that own certain banks that don't play by the rules. And that's an example. And it was clear today. So everybody should be like thinking about this. Isn't it interesting that we're going to find that Al-Allaq doesn't have to retire? It might not be because of what you think, but the bottom line is that the Central Bank of Iraq is independent, and Iraq Central Bank governor is not a state employee, as far as I can tell, and they bring that up today. I think that's where they're headed. If I'm wrong, then we're going to find out. But they've made a decision to where that he's not going to have to resign, or he could. People suggest because so much damage has been done to his reputation from them putting out, I guess bogus information or stuff that's just not true, shedding light. Because why? Because the dollar auctions are grounded down to a halt. And why? Because he's supposedly in bed with the U.S. Treasury of the United States, the U.S. Federal Reserve. But guess what? That would mean Europe is. That would mean Saudi Arabia is. That would say everybody that uses the systems and does dealings with the United States dollar would have the same problem. So I don't know. I'm not buying it. But anyway, back at it. He's back at it, which is the work that Al-Allaq is doing, and he's just marching on. Here's an article that says central bank is working with the direction of the Prime Minister, the government program in supporting electronic payments. So here he's working with Al-Sudani, the Prime Minister, supporting electronic payments. They're talking about accelerating the transition towards electronic payment sponsored by the Prime Minister, right? And another organization, Asosul Foundation for Economic Development and Sustainable Development. Isn't that the whole process of what the World Bank and the Bank of International Settlements and the IMF and everybody been working on? The economic development, sustainable development. And here Al-Allaq is talking about it yesterday. Okay, so you can see that obviously there's going to be some support for the fact that Iraq's central bank governor at the moment is not going anywhere. And people call him that he's not qualified. I don't know about that, you guys. He's had some big awards. I put out some stuff that showed in 2018, and I got a little blowback. Well, that was 6 years ago. It means absolutely nothing. Absolutely not. It shows that the guy has a background, he has a past, he has some integrity. So do some research, people. Some of those folks ought to think about it a little bit deeper before they go out like that and say, well, he's not qualified just because an MP says so. I think you're making a very uneducated assertion. So anyway, on a bright note, they've accelerated things. The central bank is working side by side with the government program, with the Prime Minister in guidance of this, supporting electronic payments. They're basically stating that we are proud of what we've achieved so far. So does that sound like a positive goal? I mean, a positive achievements? Sure it does. If they're proud of themselves and the world's proud of them, didn't we all know that they've said many times that Iraq is going to be effectively a savior of the financial system? JP Morgan was involved in that back in the UN and Davos. Again, I just have to remind you that I didn't make it up. That's for real stuff. What they're talking about, which is they've witnessed a noticeable increase with which will reflect and does reflect on the development of the infrastructure and the expansion of the use of electronic payments and the impact of the campaign launched by the Prime Minister to activate this electronic payment operations in general and in the government sector in particular. It looks to be completely successful. And they go on to talk about all the amounts of money, the trillions, and they give the dates and all these different things, which is fascinating. To me, all I can say is, in this particular case, is that if you want to read this article, it's Al-Allaq, the central bank is working with the direction of the Prime Minister, etc. And you can find that in Patreon and Discord. It says, I think work is well done, and they're proud to say so. So if the government's proud and the government's central bank is proud to say that they've had results, I would assume that the largest entities on the planet that do business globally, that are going to be doing business in Iraq to rebuild the country, are very pleased. And to me, makes me, again, that's why I'm so bullish, so positive on where I'm at. And you guys have seen that. So I'm no different. Nothing's changed today. The Prime Minister Advisor, okay, here again, we're going to talk about Mohammed Saleh. It says the government has established a roadmap for the economic model in a new Iraq, or in model in Iraq, new Iraq. So he says he's indicated that it will be a direct investment decisions to be made that achieve your goals, stressing the government of Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani has established a roadmap for the work of the economic model. And therefore they go on to say that this is a powerful and important article, you guys. So I'm going to get back to this. Prime Minister's Advisor, the government has established a roadmap for the economic model in Iraq, and it's going to be an in-depth one. It's like 3 pages. This one's 2 pages. I have another one that's 3, but these guys are getting intense because what I'm going to try to show, and I'll try to keep it brief. If you read this article in Patreon and in Discord and pay attention to it and read it thoroughly, okay, I think you're going to be pleased. I'm going to get through it. The economic model is a mathematical model used to represent the economy and analyze the behavior of various economic factors as these models are used to understand how economic elements interact. So it's a high-tech kind of paper, but and got to remember the translation is hard, you guys. Because at the level of the philosophy of the Iraqi government curriculum, so we're talking about the government, the basics of modeling the Iraqi economy were launched, okay, from an important vision based on the principle of analyzing the entire economy, taking into account the overall variables, most notably the basic development and growth in gross domestic product, imposing stability and effective operation of the joints of the national economy and the level of its interconnections. So he's getting into the point where they've already started a model. Like I said, the model, remember that semiconductor situation? I'm not saying that's the exact model he's talking about, because he's not. He's talking about something slightly different. But when they're talking about modeling, they've got to do things to create enough environment from different components to establish a value. And I think that that's kind of what he's alluding to, because they're talking about evaluating the country and its economic situation. And isn't that part of evaluation of the country, of like, well, what's your worth, right? So they're going to figure that evaluation, different than valuation, of course, but if you go on to think about it, it says the current digital life helps us use computing, okay, to conduct simulation experiments to understand the potential effects of various economic policies and adopt optimal paths from them, stressing that Iraq has established in its government curriculum a practical foundation and a path of strategy. So they've got a path of strategy, so they got something, and they're going to, since the beginning of the government of Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, they're going to use that path, okay? The statement, or the state of economic imbalance in the past has been severe and has required to be thinking about the future of the economy through an approach based on generating an alternative sector that leads the national economy. So an alternative to what leads the national economy, what is an alternative to the oil, which leads the economy, is non-oil. Okay, so there's a development path program is an academic point of view, basically. And where they get this academic point of view is from a German economic thinker, Albert Hirschman, presented it in his famous book. And they go on to talk about economic development strategy, published back in 1958. End of story. But then the long and short of it is they want to restore balance, okay? A long term for the national economy. And that's this project to delete the zeros. That's the sustainable development. That's all of these components. And the Prime Minister's advisor, Saleh, is basically talking about that in this article. He says that this development strategy and the economic model that drives the microeconomic variables did not separate from the vision of partnership between the state and private sector. So that's what they're doing, is they're telling you that we've already started this process. We just don't know exactly if they're at the end, but we believe that they are. But I believe they started, and they implied that there was law back in 2023 in June. And here we're over a year from now. So the process has been underway, and we can clearly see that they've been knocking it out of the park all along. Al-Sudani's achievements. You're seeing all the attacks on Al-Allaq. Oh, we got to get rid of this guy. The parallel market, the illegal market, they're having a problem with. We got to get rid of him. And ultimately, today we find that that's not going to be the case. But this article goes on and says the state of economic imbalance and its severe unilateralism has always required thinking about the future of the economy through an approach based on generating an alternative sector that leads the national economy. So that's just a reiteration of what I've already said, creating partnerships, public and private sectors. And here, this is interesting, is that in my view, when they talked about a digital life in this article, because they do talk about a digital life, and that digital life to me is artificial. They talked about human components, etc. Remember? So artificial intelligence was probably used, and this is about modeling and computing, conducting simulation experiments, understanding potential effects of various economic policies so they can adopt optimal paths. That's what they were saying about this. So what a government has established in their own curriculum is basically a practicality of the digital life for computing what they used. So they had to use a model to do something to be able to get to where they are today, because that's Everybody uses them all the time. Today, all these big banks, everybody uses artificial intelligence, machine learning. They use models to predict and help them quickly figure out what's the best options, what's the best path. So Al-Sudani brought back Al-Allaq to the helm at the CBI, as far as I'm concerned, back years ago. And we know that. Okay, so why did they bring somebody back that wasn't qualified? They wouldn't do that. So these calls of Al-Allaq not being qualified are just ultimately silly. Okay, so with respect to the celebration at the central bank, the new central bank. So why would they be having a big celebration for the central bank when Al-Allaq has been pretty much at the helm for this whole construction? I think the construction got started around 2016. I could be wrong, but pretty close. He's been around since about 2016. He left for a little while to come back, right? So Al-Allaq's his name's on some of their currency. Do they have new money? They very well could. So anyway, does the federal court's decision reinforce a relationship in his office? So the citizens today were surprised that the decision by the Supreme Council, the Judicial Council, continued the work of the governor. They continued the work of the governor of the Central Bank of Al-Allaq, while they stressed the demand for his removal, okay, and reconsideration of this decision to continue his work, which did not take into account the demands of the popular public opinion. Well, popular public opinion is based off bogus news, as far as I'm concerned. And so he goes, there's a political analyst that says here, we must prove where the central bank governor failed to comment that the man's meeting, translation, you guys, when did he fail in financial policy of the Central Bank of Iraq? Like, for instance, well, when did he ever fail? He didn't, okay? He goes on to say that if there is failure, it will register against the state, against the government, and not only against his relationship or the relationship. So in other words, basically the parallel market and an illegal market doesn't necessarily fall specifically on the central bank governor. Look, there's laws in place that they're supposed to be doing, and they're not abiding by them, and they're allowing it to happen. So the government is at fault. So the authorities by the government, the state, are implicit as well. And so some of these politicians that are talking about this stuff are pretty much basically kind of saying, "Hey, I'm over here. I'm telling you the truth that Al-Allaq is the bad guy." Where in fact that no, it's us in the parallel market that are the bad guys. Again, back to the banks. Some of those banks got sanctioned. Some of those banks aren't working anymore. Why? Because they're not playing by the rules. Parallel market is what? It's the illegal market. Is it playing by the rules? Not as far as I can tell. I don't know that the parallel market's legal. Is it common? Of course it is. Is it common to do what they do? Yeah, they've been doing it for years. But is it against the law? Yeah. Do they have to stop the law? Right. Is Al-Allaq the person to stop it by himself? I don't think so. I think that's where the government comes in, law enforcement comes in, compliance departments comes in, all that stuff. So, all right. It says here though, today it says, the conditions signed by the Central Bank of Iraq on Iraq's banks and the SWIFT program is linked to the transfers of the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, we know that. So he goes on to say that I think that Al-Allaq does not bear all responsibility. So he's agreeing with what I'm saying, or I'm agreeing with what he's saying. But it is a monetary and financial policy already in Iraq that is troubled, and the lack of control of the exchange rate is not the responsibility of the Central Bank of Iraq. And the overall responsibility of all authorities in Iraq. In the parallel market, in my opinion, as I say it, it's an illegal market that they need to cease, and they've already started. And I think that's why the pressure from the central bank is they finally put the squeeze on in the last week or so. And that's powerful. So this gentleman, Hussein, says, court's decision gave a dose of hope to the governor of the Central Bank of Al-Allaq without looking at the booings of his policy in managing the central bank. So in other words, for all those booing Al-Allaq, it didn't resonate, and the court's decision is in Al-Allaq's favor. And this is today. And he goes on, as another citizen suggests, it says, the strange thing is that an invitation of the masses did not receive a call to prayer, neither by the esteemed Council of Ministers, not even by the Supreme Judicial Council, which gave Al-Allaq a new opportunity to practice his work. So there's people out there that are misguided, and they're also just like, hey, wait a second, it's just still not quite right, but the Judicial Council ruled on it, and it's got a twist. That's all there is to it. And so this gentleman says, Karar, he calls on the Council of Ministers to reconsider the policy of Al-Allaq to manage the central bank of Iraq and give it another opportunity to reduce the dollar and pay attention to raising the value of the Iraqi dinar, which began to lose its value. Okay, here he goes on to say, it says, he called for activating the decisions and instructions that would revive the economy and raise the value of the Iraqi dinar. Isn't that what Al-Allaq's been doing? Isn't that the whole process to delete the zeros? Isn't that the whole big scheme of things? So you got a push and shove, and push comes to shove, like I've talked about. So that quote again, I'll say it again. He called for activating decisions, instructions that would revive the economy and raise the value of the Iraqi dinar. And then here the gentleman also says, his name is Jamal Moshan, he says, we're working on public opinion because of the negative impact of the relationship policy on the citizen, who suffered a lot from the crazy rise of the dollar in the face of the retreat of the Iraqi dinar and strange without interest. So this guy's kind of like upset too, different gentleman, but he's upset because why? Because the impact on the citizens. Well, if it's not Al-Allaq's fault, whose fault is it? I think it kind of lies in the parallel market. It lies in bankers, private bankers, and it lies in the authority that didn't police it. That's how simple that it is. And I think that's going to dry up and go away. So here yesterday, the Supreme Judicial Council, the presidency of the House of Representatives, announced the continuation of the work of the governor of the central bank, Al-Allaq, in the service. Boom, you guys, that's what we're talking about. Take a screenshot. It's pretty cool. So Al-Allaq looks like he ducked retirement. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, obviously, I think his obligation for his age is not a big issue. I think that because he's not a state employee, that's what they ruled on now, that they figured out a way that, whoa, wait a minute, he's not required to retire yet. He's an independent, and he's not a state employee. So looks like they figured out that just because they've been barking about it for years, that he's going to be too old and they want him to retire, is because he's been working hard for the last couple of years on what? Getting rid of the corruption. And that's one of the things that, if you look at his past history, he's been involved in, and it has expertise in anti-money laundering, financing of terrorism, all that stuff, getting rid of it. So anyway, the rhetoric in the media, I think that problem is going to go away for Al-Allaq. I think that he's here to finish the project, to delete the zeros. I would have to say, I reiterated that the calling for activating the decisions and instructions that would revive the economy and raise the value of the Iraqi dinar is fully in terms of, is it going to be a reality? I think that's why the central bank of governor is going to still be here. Yep. So all of those decisions that we see that have been made, and all the kind of the tit for tat from Al-Allaq and the other entities trying to get rid of him and calling him on the carpet, I think that's all just going to kind of go away. Which we saw that he didn't leave, he didn't do anything, he didn't respond so much. He came out with that report I did the other day, and you guys, that report was really good. I mean, he just like completely put everybody in their place, and they still kept coming at him, and they still didn't win. And here they are. I guess it's kind of embarrassing, because if the Judicial Council comes in and says one thing and then obviously reverts and says, hold on a minute, yeah, we got that wrong, they kind of got egg on their face. Or do they just have pressure from political issues? I would say so. There's a lot of things that are kind of rough and tumble over there. So, but on a good note is that everything that we're seeing is still focused and still on track. And I think we're going to be in a good space. So if they have actually launched this over a year ago, we're coming to a close. And I firmly believe it. They're coming to a close and they're getting ready to do what they have to do. And I think the data that we have in patreon.com /MM and crew and our Discord chat room, we lay it out quite effectively. And thank you for all you're here. We have some new folks as of today and yesterday. Thank you guys for coming in. And welcome, because you'll have a solid foundation. You can do your own research, and you can see that what I bring into each and every one of these videos from Militiamen and Crew has data behind it. Okay, I'm not just making it up or just getting phone calls. I'm actually doing the work. I put it together. It takes a lot of time to put all the work together, and I like doing it because it does help so many people. And thank you guys for the kind comments. I can't get to everybody. I just can't. But I do the best that I can, and especially when I find those that are obviously, they hit the ball out of the park and it hits me home because it's emotional, because I've been in this for so long. You guys aren't the only ones that are tired. Everybody in our crews can be tired at times, and we all need support. Each and every one of the crew members, I want to give thanks to every single one of them. They're phenomenal. And yes, we have rules in Patreon. We have rules in Discord. And it's hard to manage, so many people at the same time. So do the best. Please understand, it's not personal. It's just that we try to keep our rooms flowing, the content coming in, and consistently. Samson completely, she bangs it out every single day. And that's why we have a little bit of some structure with bringing in certain things in our general room. So please don't take it personally, but we enjoy your company. We enjoy everything that you do. And thank you, everybody, for helping and supporting. You guys do that through PayPal, you do it through Venmo, and you do it through Zelle. And it goes a long way, you guys. We appreciate it very much, and I'll see you soon. Once again, guys, don't forget to hit that like button if you like this content, subscribe to the channel, or join us at the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community for even more exclusive content. You can also donate to this channel by hitting the links in the banner to help keep this page up and running. Your generous support is greatly appreciated, as always. Much, much appreciated. Thank you so much, and have a great day.